Hello everyone, and welcome to another manga art study video, where we'll be studying the art of the 100 girlfriends who really love you. We're going to analyze what makes the style unique and what it excels at, and in the end, we'll try to imitate it ourselves to see what we can learn. Before we begin, note that I'll be showing panels from the entire series in this video, and while I won't be discussing spoilers, I'd still like to warn anyone who is currently reading the series or plans to read it someday to tread carefully. That being said, let's get right into it. First, let's go over some basic information about the series. The 100 Girlfriends is a manga that began publication in December 2019, created by a team consisting of Nakamura Rikito, who writes the story, and Nozawa Rukiko, who illustrates the art. The manga follows Aizo Rentaro, a boy who has been rejected 100 times, until one day, the god of love tells him that he actually has 100 soulmates, all of whom he'll meet during high school. And so begins Rentaro's adventure of meeting all of his lovely girlfriends. The series currently has over 200 chapters released weekly, and as of this recording, we're at 32 girlfriends. So, the number one reason that I chose this manga to study is because of something incredibly important, especially if you're planning to create a series with over 100 characters or the like, and that's great character design. Now, let's talk about why the 100 Girlfriends character design is so impressive. There are many ways to make a character look different, through shape language, size, facial features, hairstyles, clothing, and expressions. However, when you want all your characters to have human-like proportions, and even more so, all fall under the categories of pretty, cute, and charming, you can't rely on extreme exaggeration. Instead, you have to use smaller visual cues to differentiate them. I find it really impressive that I can recognize every single character in this manga fairly easily, even if you change their clothes, their hair, or even turn them into babies, which actually happens in the manga. So I think the best way to analyze this is to contrast each character and break down what makes them unique, focusing more on elements outside of their outfits and accessories since those change quite often. The easiest way to make characters stand out is their hair. In a colored medium, hair makes a huge difference, and in illustrations they all have distinct shades. But in the manga, the only choices are black, white, and shades of grey. So let's start with our white-haired girlfriends. Karane. She's a classic tsundere. And what's the most iconic tsundere trope? Twin-tails. Karane's low, wavy twin-tails make her stand out, along with her eyes, which somehow manage to look both soft and round, yet sharp and angry at the same time. Even with her hair down, her eyes and slender body type are enough to make her distinct. Nano. She embodies perfection and precision, almost robotic. Her completely straight and sharply styled hair reflects this, but the best way to recognize her is her eyes. They're always low-lidded and sharp, making her look calm, composed, and reinforcing her robotic aesthetic. Iku. She's a tomboy. Her asymmetrical short hair and bold eyebrows give her a boyish charm, making her one of the easiest girlfriends to recognize. Mimi. She's meant to be the epitome of beauty. Her features have a perfect balance of roundness and sharpness, and her long wavy hair is always perfectly symmetrical. Nadi. She's all about freedom and adventure. Besides her usual clothing, her downturned eyes and blonde ponytail, especially the way the front stars are shaped, are what makes her stand out. Ako. A cute, low-key gal. While her fashion is a big part of what makes her distinct, her gradient hair and decorated half ponytail represent the maximalist girl fashion. Her downturned, half-lidded eyes and unique smile reflect her chilly nature, and let's not forget about the heart under her eye. Maid Omai. She's a maid, but even without her uniform, she stands out. Her neatly styled bob haircut with side braids, which match her sister's hairstyle, and the way her hair is parted to show her forehead emphasize her expressions. Her large yet sharp eyes always give her a dissatisfied look, which makes it all the more impactful when her expression softens. Kaho. Her hairstyle is striking. One side falls over her eye, while the other is pulled back into a high ponytail. Since she's half Brazilian, her darker complexion also sets her apart. And as a capoeira martial artist, her athletic build makes her stand out, especially since she's not in high school, so she's never wearing a uniform. Tama. She's a cat. She has cat ears and a tail. Even if that weren't enough, her hair has a unique sharp angled shape that resembles a cat's face. And of course, her mouth always has a cat-like shape too. Matsuri. If her gothic Lolita style wasn't already eye-catching, her downturned eyes with little flower designs make her instantly recognizable. While she shares long, wavy light-colored hair with Mimimi, her bangs and overall silhouette are distinctly different. Now that we're done with our 10 white-haired girlfriends, let's move on to the black-haired ones. Kurumi has a fairly unique hairstyle and tends to wear hoodies a lot. Her thicker eyebrows and round cheeks make her look even softer and cuter, especially when she eats. Her irises also have rings, which make her stand out from the other girls. Mei. Apart from the fact that we almost always see her in her maid uniform and her neatly braided hairstyle, there's one singular thing that makes it impossible to confuse Mei with anyone else. Her eyes are almost always closed. Meme. From one girlfriend whose eyes we don't see to another. Meme's signature characteristic is obviously her bangs, which cover the entire upper half of her face. Besides that, her well put together outfits, usually longer skirts and knitted sweaters, along with her assets, make her quite unique. Next is Tio. Honestly, I don't know why there are so few girlfriends who wear glasses, though there was a chapter where they all tried on different types. But Tio's glasses are definitely an important part of her look. Along with her small stature, the thin braids at the back of her head, and her thicker eyebrows, she's one of the more recognizable girlfriends in the bands. Momoha. I like girls with fangs. I also don't know what to call Momoha's hairstyle, but I really like it, it's quite unique. And her sharp eyes definitely emphasize her sly demeanor. Sina. What is there to say? A unique hairstyle meant to resemble bunny ears, an oversized sweater with bunnies in its pocket, plus the highlights in her hair and her half-lidded eyes, it all comes together into an amazing combination. And the last black-haired girlfriend, Zetsumeri. Her long black hair makes her look imposing, her cute little beret makes her look adorable, but the most recognizable characteristic of Meru, her eyes, empty like the abyss. Now, let's go over to all the girls with shades of grey in their hair. Starting with Hakari. Even though her design is quite simple, with her neatly styled short hair, she definitely has details that make her stand out, like the flowers she always has in her hair. Shizuka. Just look at this creature. Her wavy hair is incredibly long with loose strands flying around, and her short stature and those big innocent eyes make her impossible to confuse with anyone else. Kusuri. With her big ahogi emphasizing her silliness, her short and spiky hair in her small form, and her long ponytail and glasses in her teenage form, not to mention the oversized lab coats she often wears, and her cat-like mouth, few girlfriends are as easy to recognize as her... Hakari. Apart from... Hakari's very long hair, whether it's let down or in a bun, her ringlets and flowers, just like her daughters, and the mole under her eye make her instantly recognizable in any situation. Yamame, one of the most unique girlfriends out there. She's way taller than any of the other characters, but it's not just her height and build that make her stand out. Her short hair is always decorated with flowers so that butterflies can feed on them. Momiji, she loves squeezing soft things, and maybe that's why she is so round. Her big round eyes, her mouth almost always forming an O, and her big round bun tied with a big round ribbon. And let's not forget her hair. It has a gradient that looks like it's made of small round splotches. Yaku. Her hairstyle is very angular, and she also sports an ahoge and a cat-like mouth, just like her granddaughter. She also often has her eyes closed, which give her a more granny feel. Jessica. With her neat hairstyle and sharp eyes, she always looks mature and put together, like you can depend on her for anything, which makes it even better when she's not acting her age. Uto. The first thing you'll usually notice about her is her bard-like outfit, which she almost always wears. But even without it, her hair is quite unique. It has a gradient and seems to shine, and her eyes always seem to hold a wisdom beyond her years. Rin. Did I mention I like fangs earlier? Rin has an intricate hairstyle with ombre hair and added ribbons. Her eyes also have a unique shape, which can make her look like a prim and proper girl or a violent maniac. But, of course, her most important feature is her smile. So, another girl with glasses, and apart from her short stature, her most unique feature is definitely her symmetrical hair. It's completely different from any other girlfriend. Himeka. While her hairstyle is pretty straightforward, the ombre color and most importantly the star-shaped signs in her hair definitely aren't. Her eyes also always have those shiny stars, making it impossible to confuse this unique idol with anyone else. Now Saki. With her sharp and messy hairstyle, it'd already be impossible to confuse her with any of the other girls. But, paired with her sharp eyes, which make her look perpetually dangerous, And, most importantly, the obvious screen tone in her hair, probably inspired by older manga, and she's the perfect delinquent. Nemo, with her curly ombre hair, perpetually sleepy looking eyes, and dark eye bags, she's also pretty hard to mix up with anyone else. Hasu, apart from her Sherlock Holmes inspired detective getup, she has one of the most unique hairstyles out of all of the girlfriends. Her fluffy hair with light edges make her stand out instantly. Plus, her eyes sport a unique design, and most importantly, she has short, thick eyebrows, like a Shiba Inu. And last but certainly not least, Rentaro. He somehow manages to fit the classic simple black-haired harem protagonist trope with one singular characteristic that differentiates him from all the other generic protagonists: his eyebrows. I really wanted to talk about every single one of them because just by looking at these details, you can see how small characteristics make a character recognizable. Personally, I think the designs have been getting better and better, with some of my favorites appearing in later chapters, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the girlfriends are going to look like. I really hope going through each character and identifying what makes them unique helped you learn something as well. But now, it's time to talk about the actual way things are drawn in this manga. So, characters in the 100 Girlfriends tend to follow fairly standard proportions, less exaggerated than Hanako-kun, which I covered in a previous video, but not extremely realistic either. Shape language is definitely utilized, as I mentioned in the character design segment, but in more subtle ways. I'd say this art style shines most in its cleanliness. The lines are very neat, and the use of screen tones is incredibly well balanced. Unlike some manga that rely heavily on hatching techniques for shading, this series leans more on screen tones to express values. Deeper shadows are always represented by solid black, while gradient screen tones are used to depict lighter shadows, colors, and even textures. Interestingly, the shading approach varies depending on the character. For example, most light-haired girlfriends have grey screen tones in their hair to create the illusion of highlights, while Mimi's hair features clearly defined signs outlined in black to emphasize its glossy texture. The line work is also very clean, often showing little to no pen pressure, especially in the later chapters. Despite this, there is noticeable variation in line thickness depending on whether the lines are outlining objects or adding details. One of the aspects I find most impressive, and something I specifically wanted to study, is the use of gradient screen tones. Whenever I try using screen tones myself, they often feel awkward or overwhelming. Learning how this manga maintains a good balance and deciding where to apply gradients and where not to is an essential study for any aspiring artist. I also really like how effects are used. Since this is primarily a comedy manga, exaggeration and visual effects play a huge role in enhancing comedic timing. At the same time, since it's also a romance series, shoujo-style filters like sparkles and soft lighting are frequently used, and I find the combination of these elements really interesting. In general, the manga skillfully mixes different stylistic techniques while maintaining a sense of harmony. Everything is used in moderation and balanced effectively, which is something that takes time and experience to master, but for aspiring manga artists, analyzing this balance can be incredibly helpful. Lastly, I really want to study the way expressions are handled in this manga. Both facial expressions and body language are crucial in storytelling. No matter how strong the narrative and character development are, if the characters look stiff and emotionless, it can weaken the entire experience. Hanako-kun, which I discussed in my previous video, and the 100 Girlfriends both excel in rendering and artistic detail, but what makes them stand out is how well they convey emotions, whether in comedy or drama. I believe this is one of the key reasons so many people love these stories. Beyond the manga panels, I also want to analyze their illustration work. Seeing the girlfriends in full color makes their designs look even more striking. The artist has a strong grasp of lighting and color, and there's a lot to learn just by paying attention to how they use detail. They know exactly where to add intricate details and where to keep things simple, directing the viewer's focus to the most important parts of the composition. I especially love the way they render light on hair and eyes. After studying the art of the 100 Girlfriends in theory, it's time to put those observations into practice. I'll be creating 2 manga panels and 1 illustration featuring my tiny witch character while following everything we discussed. Since costume design is another strength of this manga's art, I also want to experiment with outfits. so I'll be designing a cute school uniform that matches the setting of the 100 Girlfriends while incorporating elements from my original character. So, let's get started. Just like in my last video, I began by copying a few panels to get a better feel for how everything works. I did most of this freehand, though I think tracing can all be useful when done with intention, paying close attention to line work, setting techniques, and effects. This method helps in understanding an artist's style on a deeper level compared to just observing it. For the first panel, I wanted to recreate the dramatic effect seen when Rentaro first meets each of the girls, often accompanied by a lightning-like visual. Looking at examples from the manga, I noticed that these panels tend to be relatively simple and not overly detailed, so I followed that approach. I designed a pose that fit my character holding a sketchbook and a pen. For the school uniform, I kept it simple and easy to draw while incorporating signature elements of my character design, like heart motifs, and I also added a beret for bonus cuteness points. For line work, I used Clip Studio Paint's default pen with the brush size locked. If you're unfamiliar with how to do this, you go to the brush size section, click the settings icon, and make sure nothing is ticked. This ensures all lines remain the same width. Of course, depending on what you're drawing, adjusting line weight is crucial. Thinner lines work well for details, while thicker lines help define the overall shape of the image. Later, I went back and added varied line thickness for emphasis, especially around the face. For the shiny through lightning effect, I used the brush I found on the Clip Studio Paint store, and then I colored everything using screen tones, which you can apply through the effect window in Clip Studio Paint. I used flat colors and added a gradient to the hair, then incorporated shadows with pure black and highlights with pure white. I also added some hatching in areas like the back of my hair and the rest of the inside skirt. For contrast, I recolored some line art to white, particularly on the beret and socks, so they would stand out against darker tones. And here it is, my first attempt at mimicking the manga's art style with a simpler panel. I think it turned out quite well, staying close to how similar scenes look in the 100 Girlfriends, and it was definitely a great exercise to prepare for the next panel. For the second panel, I wanted to capture the softer, more emotional moments that appear in the manga. I chose a top-down angle where my character's teary face is partially hidden by overhead leaves. As with the previous panel, I kept the line work mostly uniform, but introduced more variation in line width to create contrast and guide the viewer's eye to key areas. I believe that strategically increasing detail and contrast in select panels can emphasize their importance within a story. The biggest difference between this panel and the first one lies in the shading. Instead of relying solely on black and white for highlights and shadows, I used screen tones in varying values, which gave the scene a much softer look. I also paid extra attention to the eyes and tears, making them more expressive and impactful. Lastly, I incorporated gradient and lighting effects to enhance the atmosphere. I think this panel turned out to be one of the most valuable ones I've created in my manga studies so far. Finally, it was time to create a full color illustration. I chose a pose where my character is blushing, holding her face in her hands, with her long hair flowing around her, something that wouldn't feel out of place in one of the 100 Girlfriends illustrations. For the line art, I didn't lock the brush size this time, as the manga's official illustrations use a lot of variation in line width. Again, I made sure to direct the attention to key areas, with the face being the main focal point. This illustration also marked my first attempt at choosing the colors for the uniform, which I later applied those values to the manga panels as well. Color selection is one of the most important aspects of character design, and even when you know what colors to use, figuring out where to place them can be a challenge. Also, you might have noticed that this version of my character isn't wearing her usual purple and gold, but that's a story for another time. And now on to the shading. Probably my favorite part. I struggled a bit at first, trying to achieve the same balance of softness and contrast in the manga's illustrations. What I ultimately found out was that layering subtle shadows with a normal hard brush, then adding soft colored lighting, like the pinkish glow on the hair, helped create the desired effect. I also used an eraser in certain areas, particularly on the clothing, to soften some of the shading. For highlights, I used a softer approach on the clothes while applying sharper highlights to accessories and hair. However, instead of using pure white highlights on the hair, I outlined them to avoid harsh contrast. The skin required a careful balance of hard and soft shading, which I think I managed well in the end. And of course, I made sure to give extra attention to the eyes, even including the signature heart highlight that appears in each girlfriend's eye on the manga covers. And there we have it. I'm extremely satisfied with how all three pieces turned out. I always love studying how different artists work, and shading in illustrations is one of the most complex aspects, so it's exciting to break it down and analyze their techniques. One thing that really surprised me was how soft the final illustration looked, even though I kept the line art entirely black. Typically, black line art gives a harder feel to an illustration, but this one maintained a sense of softness, something I'll definitely keep experimenting with. Overall, I'm really happy with how the studies turned out. By studying the art of Nozawa Arukiko, I've gained a lot of valuable insights into both character design and manga illustration techniques. While diversity in character design is important for creating a unique and engaging cast, learning how to make distinctive characters while staying within the boundaries of conventional attractiveness can be just as useful, especially if you're working on conventions like I am. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you decide to do your own study on the 100 Girlfriends art style, feel free to tag me on Twitter. I'd really love to see what you create. It's been a while since my last video, but I'm excited to make many more. Next time, I'll most likely be back with a series of 3 videos and a surprise, so I'd love for you to stick around for that. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and if you'd like to see more from me, a subscription would mean a lot. Thank you so much for watching until the end, and until next time, I hope you have a great day and create some amazing time. Bye bye!